Hail to you, Zhao. I thank you for the fortune that I've had in this past week and ask them may continue. Please accept these gifts that I have offered you and the amounts that I've given for the fortune for the next week as agreed upon. Hail, Zhao Gongming. So I wish I had a really good story for this week, but I don't. Not really. But I did have an interesting parallel that happened this week. And I'll explain some of it, but I can't explain all of it because that would kind of be giving away some stuff to too much info. So I'm working through the 76-week Goetia, and it's going a little slower than you might expect because I'm not able to do it every day. Sometimes I just don't feel up to it. Sometimes my head's just not in the right place, and I'm not saying that's good or bad, but with something like this, you can kind of do that. It's not quite like Helios Unbound, but that's where you have to do little bits over longer periods of time, and each day kind of really does count, and that's a bit different. Okay. All right. Now that Zhao Gongming has gotten his offerings, let's get this going. So what I wanted to tell you is, like, this week is I'm working with Gamigin. And the first time that Gamigin appeared in this working 76-week Goetia, now this is a demonolatry bent thing. It's actually pretty kind of mundane, if you will, in a lot of ways. Definitely not the same thing as the Kazdea. At least the last 3 weeks haven't been anything like the Kazdea, because the Kazdea is about change, making change happen, and going through the fires, which is why they use a lot of spirits like Zagan in there a couple of times and things like that. But so there are different things. Each day is a little bit different. Like, there's a meditation day, there's a free rate day where you contemplate the entity and its end, and then how it can help you within the confines of, the topics that they said they're good for. Like, a lot of times here you're talking about personality stuff, conflicts with people, creativity things. But with Gamigin, one of the things he's in there for is necromancy. And so he's been kind of talking with me about that a bit. And it's not like it's straight everyday, evocation, or necessarily conversations. Like, one of the days a dreaming day, and so anyways, one of the first things Gamigin talked to me about was something that I noticed a while ago, that some spirits, even that I know are human, don't have a spark anymore, and some do, and some kind of fade away over time, and some don't. And there's a whole lot of stuff that goes into that, I guess. But I mean, some stuff I know, I'm not going to pretend to know all, right? And so the crux of the conversation was that some egos decide to stay here while their higher spirit or higher self, if you will, however you define that, because there are as many definitions as there are people. I mean, there's some broad categories, but it's still based on your experience and things like that. And so I guess just for conversation simplicity purposes, we'll just say that spiritual part is the higher part of you that goes on, because the ego is not that higher self, right? Usually people can agree on that, but you will see ego here. You'll see people's egos, and I don't mean like attitudes. I mean their personality remains after the other part of them is gone, and that's essentially what the conversation was about. And then it wasn't but a few days later, and I hadn't told anybody about the conversation. It wasn't but a few days later that I was hit up in a conversation about that sort of thing happening, and I realized it kind of for what it was. And this was, I don't know if I said, this is kind of like an ancestor. And the ego had stayed to then help protect the rest of their family as they see fit. And so that was actually a really interesting parallel, because the ego staying here is kind of the goal of most. Now this is a general statement, and general statements can be hit or miss, right? But generally speaking, most black magicians are here to ensure that their ego continues after their physical life is done. And not stating that disparagingly or anything like that. There are absolutely valid reasons for that. You know? I suppose that makes me sound like a jackass, but I mean, it is true though. There are some really valid reasons for that, such as staying over for ancestors, to teach people, things like that. And they're going to recognize your ego, but they may not recognize the new higher you, if you will, or the total higher you, right? After you've gone through and learned what you're supposed to learn on this go around. Assuming you believe in recycling or reincarnation in some form. And so I noticed this with some of the spirits I worked with necromancy. I know it for a while. There were some spirits I have a list of people that I target when I want the practice, and it's not like you out of practice with cursing. Seems to come in handy. So I keep lists of desirables to take care of, and I noticed in one of those workings that the spirit that I was calling was still there, but it was only kind of partially there. It wasn't full, but I could tell it was still felt human, which is kind of hard to explain. But so I started noticing a while ago, and there's a nice dovetail into that. So I'll be putting these up on my blog and stuff, but some of the conversations for these things, and tonight's conversation is kind of like a spoiler, if you will, is that it was about sparks and giving people sparks, and some of this I've already done. I already know it, but it was in the context of the ego and what kind of progress, what progress would kind of look like if that is done, and that could be an entire rabbit hole on itself. You could probably spend a couple of years really researching that if you have the skills and the spirit's handy, right? Because you're not gonna dogma your way through that one. So, all right, that looks to be it for our weekly ritual, and I hope you found the conversation somewhat interesting. I'll be putting the exact wording up and things like that, which some of it is short, but I'll be putting some of the wording up for that on my blog here in probably a couple of weeks. I think I still have stuff coming out for like the next 7 days, so I suppose I better get off my ass and do something productive. So I like to get stuff out every 4 days. So there we go. Have a good week.